Everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this UBC Sauder and Allard Law School JD MBA advising session. So before we start today's activities, I'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement that my colleague Gareth is going to be doing for us. So just give me a moment. You can follow along.
Thanks very much, Vivian. So we'd like to acknowledge that UBC's Vancouver Point Grey campus is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. We'd also like to acknowledge that you're joining us today from many different places, near and far. And we acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of these lands. Obviously, we're very grateful to be working, studying, and generally enriching ourselves on these beautiful lands. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Gareth. Today's agenda, we just do some welcome and introductions of the team that's joining us today here. And then we're going to do a short JD MBA program overview, and then we're going to open things up for a discussion. So the primary focus of this advising session obviously is discussion, but we will go over a short program overview, and then you'll have a chance in the general question period to ask all of our panelists and team members any questions that you might have. So of course, joining us today, we have our special panelist, Gareth, who is the manager of Enrolment Services at the Allard School of Law. And then we also have Sylvia Rowat, who is an articling student at Osler Hoskins Harcourt, who is, of course, a JD MBA alumna. And then from the UBC RHL Sauder School side, we have myself. I'm Vivian Tran, and I'm a manager of recruitment and admissions. And we have Terry Lynn Wong, who is our marketing and communications co-op student, as well as Tamara Shatanova, who is our recruitment sales specialist. So those are the members of our team here today. If you have any questions, feel free to use the raise hand feature if you feel like speaking, using your voice feed, or you can always just enter questions into the Q&A chat box, and we will be happy to take your questions when we get to the open question period. So firstly, I'd like to reintroduce Gareth, or ask him to come back and do a little bit of a presentation about the JD degree.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I'll be presenting on the JD side of the JD MBA dual degree. Let's just move on to the next slide here. And I've got a few items there kind of explaining why, what makes the Allard School of Law a great place to study. The way this degree works is that you apply separately for both the JD and the MBA portions. So essentially you apply separately, and if both programs accept you, then you're eligible to do the combined JD MBA program. So you have to meet the criteria for both programs. So in my presentation, I'm just going to be going over kind of like what our admissions criteria are, and kind of what makes us a particularly unique law school. So Allard Law has an innovative faculty who've gained international recognition for their contributions. We have a very supportive environment at our school with plenty of mentoring, advising, a dedicated well-being counselor, and scores of clubs and student-led events. We have a very strong experiential learning program that includes clinics, externships, and mooting. As part of your degree, essentially there's an experiential learning component that's mandatory, but you have some options as to how you want to complete that component. And it's a great thing about these professional type degrees that they give you hands-on experience, so that when you graduate, you're generally ready for the professional side of things. So they make sure students graduate with that kind of experience. We also have a dedicated career services office that hosts recruiting events and assists students to recognize career options and build the skills necessary to meet their career goals. So one thing that you typically do after getting your JD degree, if you want to practice law, is you go through the licensing process. And a big part of that is what we call articles, where you're essentially working at a firm for like 9 months, kind of learning the ropes and getting more of that hands-on experience. So one of the things our career services office does is they'll help you gain an articling position before you graduate, so that once you finish your law degree, you're ready to jump right into those articles. Our school also has identified strengths in things like business law, environmental and natural resource law, law and social justice, Indigenous legal studies, feminist legal studies, and Asian legal studies. And actually the first 4 items in that list we offer specializations in. And law school specializations are very much optional. You can just get a general degree if you wish. You have the opportunity to kind of pick and choose your own courses in your upper years, but we have those subjects there for people who really want to hone in on those topics. Next slide, please.
Sorry, I'm just having trouble with this slideshow again. Sorry, Gareth, give me 1 second. I think I have a fix for this.
Okay. So yeah, so just to kind of talk about, I'm going to be moving into the admissions requirements next. We have 3 first-year admission categories, and those are general, discretionary, and Indigenous. For the sake of time, I'm just going to be going over the requirements for the general category today. Mainly because the components for the discretionary and Indigenous categories are very similar. There's just kind of some extra criteria you have to meet and some other documents you have to submit. But what we see here is kind of covered in all the first year admissions categories. So for the general category itself, and you can tell by the name that this is the category under which most people are going to apply. There's 3 components that we base our evaluations on. The first of these is the personal statement, which is just your opportunity to present more information. And the way it's structured right now is that we ask you a set of 3 open-ended questions. Each one's about 400 and 500 words long, or rather your responses to those questions will be around 400 or 500 words long for a total of about 1,300 words. You also have to submit transcripts from whatever undergraduate institution you attended, and we'll consider your GPA. So we look at your entire degree, so your cumulative GPA, minus your 12 worst credits. So basically your 4 worst courses are removed. The average GPA typically for accepted applicants is about 83%, and that's after the exclusions. And then you are expected to take the LSAT, the law school admissions test. The average score for that is around a 166 for accepted applicants. So we only use your highest score, so you are allowed to take it multiple times. It's offered several times a year with a limit of 3 attempts per testing year and 5 attempts within 5 years. And they do limit you to 7 attempts within a lifetime as well. But if you do take it multiple times, as I said, we'll just use your highest score for our consideration, and the other scores will essentially just be disregarded. So if you're unsatisfied with your score, you are able to take it again. We will consider up to the January writing of the LSAT. So for our current admission cycle, the deadline is actually December 1st, but as long as your application is in by that deadline, you can then take the January LSAT and it will count for this application. Anything beyond that will not be accepted. As part of the LSAT, you're also expected to do a writing sample, and those just need to be in by the end of January. Next slide, please. And finally, I've just got some deadlines here. So as I mentioned, our deadline for applications is December 1st. We have a new document deadline this year of December 1st as well. The LSAT deadline, as I mentioned, is just the January writing, and we start sending out offers as early as the first week of December. And that covers my portion of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Gareth, and thanks for so skillfully navigating us through these technological difficulties that, of course, prop up right when we do a presentation. No problem. I apologize for the viewing right now, but just to keep it from freezing, I'm just going to keep it in this mode. But I'm just going to go over the JD MBA program overview, so what the program actually looks like over the course of your time in the dual degree program. So you can see here that Year 1, we have the Year 1 curriculum of the JD programming. So light blue is JD programming, and then the dark blue is the MBA programming. So once you finish Year 1 of JD, you'll be on to Year 2, which would be the MBA programming. So that's first year MBA there that you see on the screen. And then Year 3 and 4, you can see that it's going to be a mix of your upper year curriculum from the JD program, as well as your kind of remaining elective courses and in the full-time MBA program. The full-time MBA program does have a variety of different career tracks. So you can see we have a career track in finance, product and service management, innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology and analytics leadership, as well as the fifth option, just to customize your degree. So you could choose one of these different career tracks, or you could also choose just to customize across these different career tracks. And also up to 1/3 of your kind of MBA programming can be done outside of the business school. So that's one of the big advantages of going to like a comprehensive research university like UBC, is that there's also courses outside of the business school that if, let's say there was a course in AI that you meet the requirements for, so long, you know, in the Department of Computer Science, so long as you meet the prerequisites of that course to get into it, as well as get the permission of that instructor and your academic director to do that course, you could do that course and have that credit towards your MBA elective space. So that's something interesting as well. As part of the UBC MBA program, you have access to our Hargi Varshney Business Career Center. So this is a comprehensive business support center that offers one-on-one career coaching with professional career coaches, career development programs, mentorship programs, and then we also have a worldwide Sauder alumni network that you can access as well. UBC Sauder is also the only network school of the Global Network of Advanced Management. And this is a program spearheaded by the Yale School of Management, and it includes 30 leading business schools all around the world, including schools like Oxford, Yale, Berkeley. And that basically allows our students to do thematic exchanges at one of these institutions. So UBC runs an exchange on sustainability. Yale has run them on behavioral science of management. Berkeley has run them on Bay Area innovation entrepreneurship. So those are also ways for you to do elective courses abroad, as well as a comprehensive study abroad program. But also unique about this program is the opportunity to do a dual degree with Yale. So if you are interested in that, feel free to pop me a message in the Q&A and I can send some more information, or we'll also be leaving our contact information and also sending a follow-up email after this in case you have any questions about any of the programming features that Gareth and I mentioned in this presentation. Admission requirements for the MBA program and JD program are kind of, the deadlines are listed here. Typically for the MBA, we are looking for 2 to 5 years of full-time work experience. Now for JD candidates, this can be flexible because I know a lot of you guys are thinking of doing the JD first and going immediately into like the JD MBA program and going immediately into industry. So this can be a little bit flexible for JD candidates. So if you don't meet this 2 to 5 year typical work experience requirement for the MBA, feel free to contact me and we can look a bit more in depth about your profile. GMAT or GRE, this is for the MBA component. So competitive score for the GMAT would be a 650 or higher, minimum 550, and then GRE, we're looking for 310 or higher, minimum 300. For the MBA component of the application, we're looking for a minimum of 2 references and there's a variety of small written essays, and then a 90-second video essay as well, which you prepare in advance and you upload to YouTube or Vimeo and you send us the link. English proficiency test is only required if you did not do a first degree in English. So if you did not do a degree in English, then you would have to write either the IELTS or the TOEFL. And the score range for that would be a 7 for the IELTS academic or 100 for the TOEFL. Great, so we are on to our question period. So I'd like to invite Gareth and Sylvia to turn on their feeds so we can start the general question period. So we haven't heard from Sylvia yet. So Sylvia is one of our alumna from the JD MBA program. So I'd like to invite her to, so Sylvia, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and kind of, you know, what undergraduate background did you come from and when you graduated?
Certainly, thanks. So my name's Sylvia, obviously. I'm from Vancouver and I did my undergraduate at McGill in Montreal. I did a BA in psychology and then I also did a minor concentration in, they call it management there, but effectively it's like a minor in business and sort of broad-based in general. I worked for a year before starting my undergrad in a software kind of high-tech company and then worked at a couple of different kind of office administration jobs throughout my undergrad. And then after that, I was working in marketing at an engineering firm before I started my JD MBA. And after working at the engineering firm, I actually was at the law firm that I'm at now and met another JD MBA at the time candidate And she told me all about the program and really sold me on it. And so that's what I then went to do. I graduated in, I guess, April or May 2021. So just before the summer. And since then, I've been working at Osler, Hoskin and Harcourt, which Vivian mentioned, is a corporate law firm in downtown Vancouver. And as Gareth alluded to, there's a bit of a licensing process to become a lawyer. So I'm in the midst of that now, working full-time, effectively under the supervision of lawyers, but doing legal work. And I wrote the bar exam this past summer. So that's sort of a brief summary of what I've been up to in my adult life.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for your introduction. And I'd like to invite the audience, if you have any questions for Sylvia or Gareth or myself, feel free to pop them into the Q&A and then we will address them as we go on. So Sylvia, can you tell us what drew you to doing a JD MBA program?
Certainly, yeah. So to be totally honest, towards the end of undergrad, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. I felt like I had really broad-based interests. Both I enjoyed psychology, but I felt like the paths in that were sort of research focused, which I wasn't super interested in, or clinical psychology. And I wasn't sure whether I wanted to go down that route either. I had always kind of been interested in law, but to be totally honest, I didn't know that much about it. I have one lawyer in my family, but I by no means come from a family of lawyers, and that was kind of what I was born and bred to do. But as I started to think more about my skill set and what I was interested in, I really did like the kind of problem solving, analytical side of things that everyone tells you, I guess, go to law school for, or you're well suited to law for. And people also told me that I love to win arguments, so that helped. But I wrote the LSAT and had applied to law school and had gotten in when I actually decided to do the MBA. And as I mentioned earlier, I was working at this law firm and met another JD MBA candidate. And I asked her about it because I'd already been interested in business. I had done that minor concentration in my undergrad. And to be honest, she just totally sold me on it. She was like, if you're able to do it, if you can get in, if it's within your means, it's 100% something I would recommend if you're interested in corporate law. It just provides such an invaluable context and experience. And so, I mean, I definitely took that and I went and wrote the GRE and I applied. And in my application, I very much had my spiel about how I really loved working at this law firm. I wanted to really provide strategic value beyond just legal value to the clients that I hope to serve one day in corporate law. Particularly, I work a lot with startups and kind of emerging high growth companies. And so they often can use some more strategic advice because the lawyer might be the only professional that they're coming to see. And so that was kind of my spiel at the time, but I didn't really know. I hadn't been to law school yet. I hadn't practiced as a lawyer. And I just was like, well, I'll wing it. I'm sure it'll be great. Like, it sounds super interesting. And to be totally honest, I think I would lean into the exact spiel that I had just as much now. Like, I think that the MBA really provided some added context in terms of, I think for business law, certainly there's an obvious connection, and I'm sure everyone here is interested in business and that's why they're here. But I think just more in terms of many of like the soft skills that are important to manage a legal practice in terms of project management and dealing with a diversity of clients or coworkers or competing deadlines. I think that law school is definitely helpful with some of that as well. But I think that it provides kind of a different lens on it. Like in law school, you can get really, really focused on all of the things you need to learn and how to study, but it's much more academic, I would say, whereas the MBA is kind of a much broader experience in terms of the work experience, the opportunity to work with different companies through various internship and in-class opportunities. So I'm kind of rambling, but that was sort of—
it's all great information.
That was, I guess, my motivation. But my motivation, like, I had no idea. And I think that many people don't before starting a degree like this. And it's scary because it's 4 years. But yeah, I definitely am happy that it's the plunge that I took.
Yeah. And like, we have some audience members wanting to ask some questions. So one is asked, like, do you see yourself using both components of the JD MBA in your career right now?
Totally. I think in little ways, I found, so I worked at this law firm last summer, and that was kind of, it's called Summer Articles, but it's sort of like an internship. And I felt as though I got maybe less involved in certain transactions and work that I was doing. But I found the MBA really helped with my confidence because I knew sort of more of the language and context surrounding what a company was doing. So if they were raising a bunch of money, I understood, oh, this is like what it means for them to be distributing shares to investors, or this is what it means to capitalize a company in different ways, or these are the benefits of issuing shares versus issuing debt, for example, if the company needs money to grow and expand its business. And so I sort of felt that I had the confidence to ask questions where I didn't understand because I had enough of an understanding to know that I was missing something. And now I think that I really, as I was alluding to, use the project management skills from the MBA the most. I think you can pick up some of the business stuff gradually for sure as a lawyer. And obviously most lawyers don't have an MBA, including most business lawyers. And so I think that's what I'm noticing the most now, not just because I think that, you know, all the business stuff does still benefit me immensely because it's stuff that I already know, but sometimes the stuff you already know is at top of mind. And I found that that's really, really served me well over the past few months because the start of your career as a lawyer is inevitably very busy and requires juggling a lot of priorities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess it just like doing the dual degree just gives you all that knowledge that you can start to use right away in a challenging, like, you know, in a very demanding career. But it also gives you that experience, like working, you know, with like demanding kind of like content that, and then just the sheer amount of it. So that's great. Gareth, we have a question for you. Gareth, is it better to apply for both programs at the onset or wait until starting your first year with the JD?
So I'm, pardon me, I'm of the opinion that it doesn't really make a difference. So it's set up so that your tuition is the same either way. And your first year is always going to be fully law school. So you know, whether you apply for both programs at the outset or wait a year to apply to the MBA portion, that first year is always just like first year law courses. I have heard from law students the first year of law is the hardest. I don't know, maybe Sylvia can attest to that or disagree with it or whatever. But so the only thing I think that I would caution against is that you're going to be very, very busy in your first year of law, and you may not want to be juggling an MBA application at the same time that you're doing those courses. So maybe for that reason, I maybe have a recommendation, like a slight recommendation toward applying for both at the outset. But in terms of like which courses you actually do and what tuition you pay, it all works out to being the same.
Yeah, I would pretty much echo that. I mean, I guess technically I applied during my first year of law school, but I wrote the GRE the summer before. So I think I wrote it August 25th or something and gave myself a whole 5 days off before I started law school. And I think that it's definitely helpful to do it that way. I did find that there was a bit of juggling in terms of getting the rest of my application together in the fall, and probably it wouldn't hurt to do it earlier. But I would totally echo the fact that there's a lot of studying and getting used to in first year law school. And I think for me, at least, studying the things we were learning about in law school in first year was a lot more interesting than studying for a standardized test. And so I think that if you're really trying to maximize your chances of doing well on the GRE or the GMAT, then probably better to get that out of the way at least before starting law school.
Yeah, I would definitely say, like, if you are interested in it, you don't want to be trying to write a standardized test while you're doing first year law. So if you're really interested in it, at least write the standardized test beforehand, so you're not trying to like get a good score on it while you're also juggling first year law. Thanks for your input on all that, Gareth and Sylvia. Sylvia, there's a question for you. What was your experience with the course load of the program?
It's interesting because I was thinking about that before this webinar, and I found in first year law, it just requires a ton of self-discipline, to be honest. Like there's really no one holding your hand or making sure that you do the work. And there aren't a ton of deliverables. And what I mean by that is there aren't very many assignments. Primarily, you're writing exams. And you do have exams in December. And at least when I went through first year, they're kind of like, they're almost like practice exams. So they can count if you do well on them. But if you do better on your final exam in the spring, then that'll count for your grade. But it was, for me at least, just a ton of pressure, because it feels like so much leading up towards these big exams and you really want to do your best, but you're in this whole new industry basically of legal analysis. And so I think for me, it was just time management, and it was definitely busy, but it was manageable. In the MBA, I found it was also very busy in a different sense. So when I talked about the lack of deliverables in law school, it's like the opposite in the MBA, where you just constantly have quizzes or group projects or assignments. And I guess that's sort of where the project management skills come in, is you just need to learn how to prioritize and get it done on time. And it's a much more structured program, I would say. You really need to be there every day, showing up, ready to work, ready to do stuff on the fly. Whereas with law school, it's more of a slow burn of managing your time and your ability to study and really digest material. So those are kind of the first 2 years. I would say the second 2 years of the program are probably more customizable in a sense. And so I think the workload is still heavy, certainly. And in that third year where you're kind of juggling both, I found that it was more just juggling being in two different programs with two different social groups or two different networking opportunities and that type of thing. Depending on the path you choose to take in law, sometimes you'll be going through recruitment during that time for law firms. And so that can be kind of challenging, balancing networking with law firms, putting in applications, and then also still being in some MBA courses where you'll have these deliverables or group presentations. But to be honest, I really liked it. I found it refreshing that I could have my courses that I was really head down in the books, just studying, and that's all I had to do. And then have my courses where I just had to have group meetings and like talk to people and present. And it almost forced me to have more of a balanced social life in certain respects, while still, I guess, juggling my coursework. So it's busy. It's a lot. A lot of people say it's like super busy. You couldn't ever work. I worked part-time throughout the entire degree, and I was okay doing that. But I think I also like to kind of push myself to the limit. But yeah, busy, but definitely doable and super rewarding.
Awesome. And yeah, part-time work, at least for the MBA program, we always like caution against it, but
yeah, say don't do it. And I was like,
but like, yeah, so it's not recommended, but if you find something meaningful, then like obviously some people have made it work. Thanks so much, Sylvia, for those insights. I'd like to like delve into a little bit about something you said, which is like kind of working between the two cohorts. Like, what was your experience, or what insights do you have being parts of like basically two different cohorts, like being part of a law school and being part of a business school?
Yeah, it's funny because I think that was something I was actually quite worried about, just because given the timing of my application, I had already committed and decided to go to law school. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be starting with my whole class. I'm going to be doing something different. And those things are true, but I don't think they're a bad thing. So I think I made a really great group of friends in first year law school. And I think it's kind of hard not to at a place like UBC. You're in these small groups that you kind of move around to all your classes with, and you just really get to know everyone well. And there are so many kind of social and networking opportunities that you'll get to know people in even more. And then the MBA is kind of the same thing. You're in a cohort with more people, but you're more involved, I think, in like the group work and everything else. So you get to know everyone super well, make a great group of friends. And I think there were times when I definitely did feel a bit of FOMO, for lack of a better word. All my friends from law school got jobs at law firms, if that's what they chose to do, a year before I did, and went through the recruitment process together. And I still remember finishing class for the MBA one day and just booking it downtown as fast as I could to celebrate with them when they got their job offers, because it all kind of happens on this one day. And then likewise, it was kind of weird when a lot of my friends graduated from both the law program and the MBA program, and I was still in school. But it just kind of forced me to make friends with a whole other group of law students who were still there, because in the fourth year, you're only doing law school. And I think that was great too. It was obviously harder for me last year because it was during COVID and virtual, but I just leaned into the few people I had met before. And in some ways, it's great because you have the benefit of other people's experience, at least on the law side, of having gone through their summer articles or their second year of law school, or graduated from law school and starting to article or get called to the bar. And so if anything, I think it kind of just gives you more opportunities to meet more people and gain more, I guess, mentorship from the people who are your peers. And I don't know, I mean, it's a different path. And so that's always going to come with ups and downs. But I think ultimately the pros outweigh the con.
Yeah. No, I can understand that sense of FOMO when you're watching everyone graduating and moving to the next step. But I take your point, like there is that benefit in that, like once your classmates go on to job offers and working for different companies, they actually become a source of different insight for you as they work for these companies. And then as they go through these experiences, they can kind of be like mini coaches for you because they just went through the process. So even though like I can agree that there probably is a sense of FOMO, I do think that there is that benefit that they can also become a different type of mentorship for you. And
for sure. And I think if you decide to go on to practice law, you have perhaps mentors then in your law firm, but likewise, if you decide to practice law, you then know a bunch of people working in businesses, which is great from a business development standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thanks so much for that, Sylvia. We have a question here from Ryan, and Gareth, I'm going to need your insight from the JD side on this. But Ryan's asking, do you look at undergraduate degree even if you completed a master's? And on the MBA side, yes, we do look at your undergraduate degree even if you did complete a master's. But note that even if you only have an undergraduate degree, or if you have an undergraduate degree and a master's degree, for example, we tend to look at the senior level courses from your undergraduate degree, so the third and fourth year courses. So we know universally, and like probably many people have experienced this, first 2 years are pretty rough in undergrad. So you know, like we know that happens, so that we focus more on the senior level courses from your undergraduate degree, and then we look at the entirety of your master's. So that's what it looks like from the MBA side. And anytime you have any questions about that or you're concerned, just you can reach out to us, and then we'd be happy to look at your transcript and your profile and do a little bit of advising on that. But Gareth, what does it look like on the JD side?
So for the JD side of things, we actually base your GPA on your first undergraduate degree. We do consider masters under our holistic categories, so discretionary, indigenous, but under the general category, it's mainly just primarily based on that first undergraduate degree. We do the exclusions for those courses that just didn't work out. But yeah, it's your cumulative GPA from your first undergrad degree for us.
Okay, great. So like, do note that like, of course, JD and MBA, we run our own admissions, right? So we have different processes for how these things work. So yeah, so you kind of have to approach two different admissions processes, which is why, we have myself and Gareth here. So we can answer on both sides. Great. And then there's another question about, and Gareth, I'd like to get your insight on this, but are there any resources to help students prepare for the LSAT or GMAT GRE? So I can answer from the GMAT GRE side, and then I'll invite Gareth to answer on the LSAT side. But absolutely, for GMAT GRE, there are prep courses that are offered through UBC Continuing Studies, for example. Actually, I think they're called Extended Education now. So they offer prep courses on GMAT and GRE. And then there's also online resources, like some students prefer the online resources. So Magoosh, Kaplan, and Princeton, they all offer kind of online courses as well. So a variety of different resources and including UBC-based ones as well. Gareth, any insights on how to prepare for the LSAT?
Yeah, I'm always singing the praises of the Khan Academy LSAT test prep. I'll actually put the link in the description here. So this one's free, it's online, and it's fully endorsed by LSAC, who are the people who administer the LSAT. And we've heard nothing but good things about it. So I would recommend starting with that if you're looking to study for the LSAT. There are other resources. Usually they'll cost you something. So there's books you can get, there's courses you can take. And from what I've heard, there's there's a lot of good stuff out there, but I would recommend kind of going for the Khan Academy one first, seeing how you do, and then if you need something extra, look into those other options.
Great, thanks so much. Sylvia, I have a question for you. What is it that you know now that you wish you knew before you entered the JD MBA program?
I think it's funny because you told me you were going to ask this and I still didn't come up with a good answer. But I think it's sort of to give myself a bit of a break in that, like, life transitions are hard and it takes time to get used to things. And I think that I sort of freaked out at the beginning of law school and then everything was totally fine. And then I freaked out at the beginning of the MBA program and everything was totally fine. And I think for me, I wish I had just right from the outset known, like, just approach things with enthusiasm, like lean in as much as you can, do all the things. If the things aren't working, don't do those things, do different things. And just like, don't worry so much about any of the expectations I might have built up for myself in my head. I found that both about halfway through first year of law school and about halfway through the first year of the MBA, I realized what a great time I was having and like how many great friends I had made. And I think it's maybe just getting through that first hurdle of knowing that you're not going to fail and drop out of school and everything's going to be totally fine. Mm-hmm. And I think just, yeah, like really approaching the program with enthusiasm and seeking out all the opportunities you possibly can, because it really is a wonderful experience and you meet so many amazing people. I think across the board, like all of my best friends are now from either law school or the MBA program, and I'm still so close with all of them. And even though I'm in the legal profession now, I would say equally close with my MBA friends and see them all the time. And I think just having, I guess, the confidence from the outset that it was going to be a great experience and it wasn't the end of the world if one course didn't go perfectly or one experience wasn't 100% what I thought it would be. And yeah, just kind of relaxing, which is something I think I need to tell myself to do a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like if you go into a JD MBA program, you're going to probably be like that A-type personality, whether you're like extroverted, introverted. Probably perfectionism is going to be something that you hold kind of dear in your habits. So I think like that's what a lot of our actually our like MBA grads have told us, is that they had to let go a little bit about that, like because it can't just have been about that. It can actually cause you to freeze. It can cause you to panic when you don't need to. So it's about that kind of growth mentality where like sometimes you do need to like just relax a bit and you know, trust in your ability to problem solve through issues. The programs are both designed to push you. So if you don't feel like at some point challenged, then, you know, you're not really learning, right? So it's part of learning how to challenge yourself in these challenging programs, but also learning how to work with it in a way that is efficient. And being efficient doesn't mean that you're panicked all the time or you're like something doesn't go perfectly and you can't get over it. It's about getting over those hurdles and sometimes even getting over your own hangups about what is perfect or how things should be. So that's a great source of insight. Thanks so much, Sylvia. Gareth, I'd love to get your insight on this. Enli has asked the question, what are the holistic approaches that both the JD and MBA look at in an applicant? I've been attending law school webinars in the past few months and each admission officer has a different approach. So what would you say, Gareth?
Yeah, so yeah, different law schools have definitely different ways of looking at applications. So they'll often give very different answers to that question, depending on what school they're representing. For our own part, we've tried really hard in the past couple of years to kind of formulate some questions that really get at the kind of stuff that we want to know about you. In general, I mean, so the personal statement is really kind of geared in a way that you can approach it from a variety of different angles. But in general, what the admissions officers want to see is kind of what you've been doing, not just in your studies, but kind of outside of that. So, and I mean, that can be anything. It depends on what your interests are. It can be clubs you've joined, like extracurricular stuff you've done, volunteer work you've done. All of that stuff is valid and all of it looks good on a law application. People often ask kind of like, what kind of things should I be doing? And I always say that it depends on what your interests are and it depends what you can take on. Because GPA is an important part of the application, I often caution people to not take on more than they have time to do. Often people want to join like every club and everything available to them, but you've got to, give some priority to your courses as well. I mean, you don't have to be doing anything law specific either. It's like I said, everything looks good. They're just looking for people who are engaged with their community, who show leadership skills, and who have interests outside of their studies. And there's tons of different things that can show that and represent that. So it just depends kind of what your interests are. So yeah, it's just a matter of kind of seeking out your interests and finding things that line up with that. All that stuff looks good in a personal statement, and we consider all of it holistically through our process.
And then on the MBA side, we do look a lot, like especially for JD MBA candidates, we look at you a little bit differently. This is where I would say that where that 2-year kind of MBA minimum is not necessarily required, right? Like if it makes sense, like MBA typically for a traditional applicant needs at least 2 years of work experience because the MBA is designed to facilitate career shifts. But if you're doing a JD MBA, you have a very different, most of the time, you have a very different kind of career goal than your traditional MBA candidate, right? Your career goal probably involves something to do with law, right? So we would want to hear from you about like, how does this JD MBA work? What is your plan and how does the MBA add value? Like, let's say you're planning to go into the law field, then what is the value added of the MBA at this young stage in your career? Because most of you will be looking at us without any kind of work experience or very limited work experience. So we'd want to know like, what value does the MBA add to your future aspirations, which if you're doing a JD MBA would obviously include law. So what would then be the value added of the MBA? So that's the side that we would want to hear about from the MBA side. Thanks so much, Gareth, for your valuable insight into the JD application procedure. Like for MBA, we're looking at you as a law student as well. So that piece is very important for us. Like how does this degree add value at this stage if you're going into law? So that's something you want to really be thinking about if you're doing both the JD MBA degree. Okay, some questions here for Sylvia. Sylvia, Taylor's asking, during the recruitment job search process, did you find any hesitancy from potential employers regarding the joint program, or did you find it helped?
It's so funny because I don't know if someone said to me that would happen or if I just convinced myself, but I definitely was worried and had my whole spiel about how like, I know that I'm committed to law for my whole life and I didn't do an MBA because I'm having hesitations and I'm going to jump ship as soon as I get called to the bar. No one asked anything like that. I think everyone's super enthused to hire diverse candidates, and whether those candidates are diverse in terms of their background because they have business experience or whether they have a really interesting legal background or a master's degree in another field. I think that it's great to be able to differentiate yourself. And as long as you have kind of a compelling story about why it is that you want to work somewhere and how all of your past experiences, whether that includes an MBA or whether it includes different kind of opportunities that have presented themselves to you, I think that as long as you kind of have a thread in terms of how that all ties together and has led you to where you are and you're going to be the best person for them to hire, then it's not really something I would worry about.
Great. Thanks so much, Sylvia. Sylvia, I do have a question for you. Are there any things you'd like for prospective applicants to the JD MBA kind of course? Are there any things you would encourage people to really think about before they, embark on this JD MBA journey?
Yeah, I think, law school is a big commitment in terms of time and finances. It's 3 years and it's not inexpensive. The MBA is just adding an extra year to that. And so there is a huge opportunity cost associated with that because that's like another year that you're not probably working full time and making a salary, and it is expensive. And so I think it's sort of about evaluating whether both degrees, either together, whatever, kind of makes sense for you and is achievable, because I think that they will both push you and they're hard and you're going to have moments where you're going to kind of doubt yourself. But if you know I thought through this, this was the right decision for me, and I really want to be here, and it's going to have ups and downs, then I think for me, at least, that really helped, because I didn't kind of stumble into it. I wasn't sure, but I made the decision, and I was like, okay, I'm going to show up and I'm going to get through this even when it's tough. And this is what I want. And even if I don't know 100% how it aligns with my career goals, or even if I don't know 100% where I'll be in 10 years, these were my decisions for doing or taking this path, I guess. And I think that that really helps a lot, because those reasons will be different for everyone. And as long as you know that they were your reasons and it's what you wanted, then I think that that can kind of help with a lot of doubts or insecurities that can come up along the way.
Absolutely. We totally look for that as well in the application process, is this, the thinking that, this is a huge investment of, your time and finances. So, we want to see that kind of sense of direction, that you've at least done some thinking about what you want to get out of these programs, what your learning objectives are. So thinking about these things beforehand is super helpful, and it should be something everyone does before they invest in something like this. So thanks so much for that, Sylvia. We have a question for you from Enli. They're asking, how did you finance your grad school for JD MBA, and what are the opportunity costs associated with choices made?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get super specific, but I did apply for a lot of scholarships, both within UBC, but also external scholarships as well through some of the extracurriculars I had. And to be honest, there are a lot of opportunities outside, if you kind of get creative, like outside of the traditional, like the Allard Law School offers this, Sauder offers this. There's really a lot to find. And so I applied pretty broadly for scholarships. I also, as I mentioned, had worked quite a bit, and I did have some assistance. I think in terms of the opportunity cost, it's just, it's the difference between whatever kind of part-time work you can manage during the summers or prior to starting the degree, or if you worked in undergrad, and how much of that you're able to save versus like having a full-time salary. But I think, yeah, the opportunity cost will look a little bit different for everyone. I'm also from Vancouver, so I was able to live with my parents in their basement for a large portion of my degree, which I think was also an opportunity cost. Very happy not to be living there anymore. But yeah, it just kind of depends on the types of things that you can make work in order to afford it for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And it's worth it to mention, like when you're a young grad and when you're a new grad, your opportunity cost, at least for an MBA, I would say, because like a lot of people do MBAs kind of like 5-6 years down the road, that opportunity cost is really great. Like once you are like well into your career, so that's that kind of the argument for doing a JD MBA. If you feel like you're going to need the MBA, your opportunity cost for doing an MBA is way lower when you're young in your career than when you're 5, 6, 7 years down the road. Then your opportunity cost is whatever you're making that time, right? $100,000. Totally. Times that by maybe 2 years, that's $200,000 opportunity cost. Whereas when you're fresh out of university and you're just doing a JD and you see that in your future and you really believe in it, then it's a good time to do it, because your opportunity cost is lower when you were younger.
And to add to that, it's shorter too. So if you do it joint, it's 4 years. And I mean, the UBC's MBA program is shorter than some others, but an MBA program could be up to 2 years. So if you know you're going to go to law school and you're thinking about 1 extra year, I totally echo that there's a big tuition cost for sure, but I think the opportunity cost is much lower at this point than it could be in the future.
Yeah, and that's why we have a program like this, right? Because if you know it's going to be in your future, if you do it earlier, then you can combine the knowledge, right? And then maybe get started on an upward, like on a faster trajectory than when you started, and then stop, and then you move your trajectory. And of course, there's that opportunity cost, like 5, 6, 7 years down the road, which is being much higher than it is when you're young. So that's a really compelling, argument. And thanks for asking that question, Enli. Great. So Sylvia, I did have a question about, like, can you tell us a little bit about the support resources that you utilized, both on the Sauder and on the Allard side, and just talk a little bit about like resources that were available to you, and then what you used and the benefits of them?
Certainly, yeah. I actually thought about this and since forgot when you were both introducing the programs, but the Career Services Office, well, that's what they call it at Allard, and it has a slightly different name, the Career Center, I think, at Sauder, but both of them are really phenomenal. Like, to be honest, I would say that that was the biggest kind of unexpected thing, where I just felt so privileged to be at a school that had those types of resources and opportunities. And this sounds like a paid endorsement, but it's true. Like, I think if you can lean into those supports, I especially found for me, just because I was going through the recruitment process in law school, being able to meet with those career advisors and kind of get insight into sort of what employers were looking for, ways that I could maximize my chances of getting a job and all of that. And I think with both Sauder and Allard kind of aligned with that is the networking opportunities that come along with that. There's so many different avenues where you can meet employers from various industries through Sauder and employers in the legal industry through Allard, and kind of learn about different opportunities, especially at Sauder, that you just wouldn't necessarily have thought of or known of had there not been such a strong network between, I would say, the career services office and graduates and alumni from, I think, Sauder in the MBA, but just Sauder as a whole, like from undergraduate students too. And people have really connected with some super awesome opportunities internationally and stuff. So I think for me, that's the biggest support that comes to mind, but there are also some really good, more personal supports. Like I know at Allard, there's, I'm going to totally butcher her title, but like a wellness counselor. And I actually met with her a couple of times as I was approaching the end of my degree. And it's like a totally free counselor who's exclusively for law students and really understands some of the perfectionistic and type A struggles that people in that type of degree tend to have. And I thought she was really, really wonderful. Like, we talked about personal things, but also just some of my approaches about managing my time or stress or carving out time for myself as I entered my full-time career. So I think, yeah, those are the two things that really come to mind. And I think it just kind of depends on the types of supports that you're looking for. There's also a ton of extracurriculars to get involved in. And I don't know if that qualifies as a support, but I definitely got involved in a lot of volunteer work through the law school primarily. And I think those types of opportunities are really, really great. And I'm sure a lot of programs offer them, but I was genuinely very impressed with the quality at UBC.
That's fantastic. Like, both schools put a high emphasis on student experience and you know, like, not just student experience, but kind of that community building. So you had opportunities to give back to the community through some of your volunteer experiences. It's about building community. It's about building your network as well. So that's really great to hear that you had such a high endorsement. We did not pay Sylvia.
I was given no warning about this question.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's just, I'm really glad to hear that you had such a positive experience. And yeah, I echo that both schools have a very high emphasis on student experience and student support. So I'm glad you had such a positive experience to share with our participants. So we are coming towards the end of our session. And so I'd always like to take this opportunity to ask, like, our panelists, if you were to leave our attendees with one piece of advice as pertaining to anything regarding the JD MBA program, whether it's admissions or success in the program. Gareth and Sylvia, I'd love to ask if you have like one piece of advice you would offer to our participants today. Gareth.
Thanks. Man, one piece of advice. I think so. I mean, the application process can be really stressful. So I would say just one way to counter that is to put in a lot of time for preparation and just kind of plan that into your strategy. Sometimes people put aside like months to study for the LSAT and get ready for it and to kind of formulate their personal statement. So yeah, I would just say, give yourself plenty of time to plan ahead. Often with these standardized tests like the LSAT and the GRE, a lot of your performance in it depends on how you're feeling when you go into it, and being well prepared will probably make you feel better and hopefully improve your score in that sense. So yeah, that would be probably my best piece of advice.
Yeah, don't let test anxiety take you down. Like, these are obviously really challenging tests, right? But the number of times that people with the right knowledge like do poorly in these exams, and you could tell it's because of test anxiety. It's a real issue. So trust in your studies, trust in your knowledge, and just you just got to be as relaxed as you can, right? Like the tests are designed to challenge you. It's like, at least for like the GMAT, GRE, it's adaptive as well. So like the better you're doing, the harder the test feels. So like, yeah, there's no way around it. It's just to kind of test your ability under pressure sometimes, but don't let test anxiety take you down. So that's a really great piece of advice, Gareth. As well as just like use your like support services if you need it, and just like be relaxed as you can about a process that is quite stressful just by design. Sylvia, any last piece of advice for our participants?
Yeah, I would totally echo that. Standardized tests are not great. Yeah, I don't have great things to say about either of those tests, but just power through it, don't get in your head. But in terms of the advice that I would give, I think talk to people. Like if this is something you're thinking about, if you have no idea, if you haven't ever spoken to a lawyer, if you haven't ever spoken to an MBA grad, if you've talked to people who on the other side, like maybe thought this was what they were going to do and then changed their mind, just reach out to your network. And I think the more that you learn about different people's paths and what they kind of were thinking at your stage and what they would think about that looking back, just helps you make more informed decisions and kind of figure out what interests you or what types of opportunities might arise. Like I never would have applied to the MBA had I not happened to work at this firm and happened to talk to this candidate. And, you know, now I'm back at this firm, partly because she was such a good mentor. And I think that those are the types of things that you can get in a program like this, meeting really great people. But I think also seek that out as soon as you can, because that type of knowledge and those connections can only be beneficial, I think.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, Sylvia. And I'd love to echo that as well. If I were to give like one piece of advice, is to like definitely reach out, learn about this discipline, talk to people who have done it before. It's great that you're attending this session to learn more about the program, but the more information you know, the better. And the more you can see whether this fits what you want to do in the future. Like goal set for yourself, talk to people, see if this is a fit for you, and then kind of take the steps then to you know, start the application process, but also get to know the people involved. Like Gareth and I are available for advising sessions, and we're always happy to, you know, chat with prospective students and kind of walk you through the process and see if this is a good fit for you and answer any questions that you have. Don't forget, we know this is a huge investment of your time and money and future, really. So it shouldn't just be something that's done in the dark or like on a whim. You should really get as much information as possible. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming to join this session and learning more about the UBC JD MBA program. I want to thank our panelists, our amazing panelists, so much for making the time out of their busy schedules. Gareth and Sylvia for giving your insights into kind of your respective domain areas and giving us another glimpse of what this program means from different perspectives. So thank you again to all the attendees and also to our amazing panelists and team members. And we look forward to connecting again in the future. Bye now.
Thanks, everybody.